Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this odd episode of the Hawk's Eye View. No other board members here this time, just me, and for good reason. I have a number of things to report. So, you may have noticed that the Hawk's Eye View is basically dead. Hopefully not for much longer, but we'll get into that later. And this was a deep-rooted problem, maybe even from the beginning of the podcast, but we just couldn't get organized together enough to make an episode happen. Even with the Discord server, I would ping everyone and then nothing for like a day. And then something would come up, but usually too late. We couldn't get together in fighting shape in order to make really any episode. And that's what led to our decision to make episodes with small boards, like you saw in the Hawk editorial episode, the Veterans Day episode, things like that. And even that was pretty tough, as, you know, most of the people on our boards were 24/7 busy. Like Jeffrey, he's just 24/7 busy all the time. So here, he was pretty absent for the entirety of the Hawk's Eye View life, sorry. Harnoor, Lewis, Nikhil, they all had their basketball things. The really only active ones that participated in most activities that we did in Hawk's Eye View were Natalie and Stephanie. And now they're out of the picture. So I'll elaborate on that a bit. Recently, we've had a massive exodus of people, members in the Hawk's Eye View. So it all began, Stephanie left the Hawk's Eye View, and she was a big, string tying us all together. She managed the Instagram. She was definitely the most active member besides me in the podcast. And just bam, gone. I don't blame you for that, Stephanie. I don't think you not leaving would have changed things very much. And then I just tried to start, uploading again, because by the time she left, we already were in hot water when it came to consistent uploads. But then just the same thing happened, and after having to deal with it for like the third time, I just asked everyone in the chat, hey, say I if you've lost all interest in the podcast. Everyone except Jeffrey said I. And I allowed them to leave because, I'm not the kind of person to drag people headlong into an expedition that they aren't even excited for. So everyone left and Jeffrey stayed. But even with just Jeffrey, if you don't know, Jeffrey Lee, one of the members of the podcast, he has a bajillion extracurriculars, and he's not going to be able to get with me for a lot of different things on the podcast. And so now we're just in this awkward state of technically still existing while being essentially dead at the same time. It's honestly kind of depressing. But I still have plans for the podcast. I made an entire doc detailing every activity that we had remaining for the year in this big checklist with some descriptions. I was, I'm ready to keep going with this. I think this has a lot of potential, and who knows, maybe it can even extend into more years. And with more ideas and more people, I just feel like we could make something incredible, even from the ashes of something that wasn't. So, you may have seen on the bulletin, I am hosting a recruitment. I'm not 100% sure if anyone will join, but we'll see how it goes. And even if no one joins, I'm going to do my best to, keep things together here. Make sure this podcast isn't completely dead. But yeah, with what passion I do have left for this project, I'm going to try and revamp it, soft reboot it. We're going to get more members. We're going to try to be more consistent, but we need to lay out some rules for that to actually happen. So, for people who saw the message, for people who saw the Hawk Bulletin post, and for people who have watched this episode and are curious to join, if you're there, here are a few things that we need to set straight. So the main thing I need on any, person who's willing to join the podcast is just agency and, time. If you can't dedicate at least a little bit of your time to this podcast, then it'll just be a repeat of the past. I don't really want to try and drag along people who just sit around and don't contribute that much to the podcast. It slows me down and it doesn't allow for many things to be done at a time. And I really just need good communication between podcast members. Like, as long as you can dedicate some time into this podcast, as long as you can play a role and just publicly speak or have interesting prattle about any of the things that we're covering in any given episode, then you're good to go. As long as you can contribute something interesting to this podcast, as long as you can dedicate some time and work things out and stick to, a plan, you should be generally fine when it comes to this podcast. I don't think I'm asking for very much here. Still, for anyone joining, if you need to know how to, the requirement is pretty simple. Just come to Mr. Cornet's room, that's room C104, on Thursday during lunch. Any Thursday works. And there we'll be able to discuss the plans, maybe record if we're ready. And people who decide to join will be added to the Hawk's Eye View Discord chat so we can all communicate on our future topics. If you don't have a Discord, we can probably make a Hangouts chat for you. And that should be it. I hope you do join if you're interested. But I think that should be it for this episode. And I hope you have a great day. May the podcast continue under new blood. Bye.